Veteran stood, unaided, silent. His body trembled, then collapsed. His head struck the cold marble floor. The entire courtroom froze. Why was he even here? Not for a serious crime, just for missing 2 court dates, because he couldn't drive himself. But what happened after that fall would bring a judge to her knees and force America to reconsider how it treats its veterans. This wasn't just a hearing. It was one of those veteran stories that shook the foundation of justice. And if you're watching this from Justice for Veterans, get ready for a moment you won't be able to look away from. Chow Raymond Ray Walker once served as an infantry sergeant in Afghanistan. On a patrol mission, the vehicle he rode hit an IED. He survived, but his legs didn't. Since his discharge, Ray returned home quietly. No parade, no banners, only wooden crutches and relentless nightmares. He lived in a small room with a faded American flag hanging on the wall. At times, neighbors would see the dim light on at 3 a.m. when Ray awoke to gunfire in his dreams. He asked for nothing, never complained, just tried to live as a folded memory, until one small, seemingly harmless event pulled him back into the light, a parking ticket and a court summons. That's when the cracks began to form. For Ray, every morning is a new battle. Just to get out of bed, he has to grab the chair's frame and slowly rise using his worn wooden crutch. He doesn't drive. He can't. His left knee is shattered, his spine fused with titanium rods. Every step burns a sharp reminder of a war long past. Recently, Ray got a ticket for parking in the wrong zone. He called to reschedule the court date. He had no transport, no one to take him. No one responded. A week later, a second summons arrived. Ray quietly placed it next to the photo of fallen comrades. He didn't know the upcoming court wouldn't just judge a parking violation. It would judge how a society treats those who bled for it. That morning, it rained cold. Raindrops beat against the courtroom windows like a somber drum. Ray entered slowly, on crutches but with dignity. He wore his old, worn uniforments, shoulders frayed, medals still pinned. Medals that once made people rise as he passed. But today, no one stood. Only judging eyes, and the cold stare of Judge Eleanor Briggs, known as the Iron Lady. She didn't ask much, she didn't listen, just glanced at the file, then struck the gavel. Mr. Raymond Walker, stand. No assistance. This court will not deliver sentencing until the accused stands tall before the law. The courtroom paused. A few murmurs stirred. Ray looked up, not angry, just quietly pained. Then, he placed his crutch to the side. Yacht, Ray let go of his crutch. One hand gripped the wooden rail. The other clenched his coat's edge. His legs one braced with metal. The other long since weakened and trembled, unsure how to hold him. But he tried. A gritted jaw, a shaky motion. Sweat poured down, though the room was cold. No one spoke. The court clerk stared down, avoiding his gaze. And then, he stood, unsteady, but standing. For about 4 seconds, Ray Walker, the soldier, who once fell on the battlefield, stood again in this cold courtroom. Then his leg gave out. His head slammed against the tiled floor like a gunshot in a forgotten war. Silence. No one dared breathe. But the first voice to cry out wasn't the judge's. "Yaj! Ray!" A woman's voice cracked through the silence. Claire Ray's younger sister, dressed in nurse, scrubs rushed to him like time had frozen. She knelt beside him, cradling his head, hands trembling as she checked his wound. "He has medical clearance. I sent it to the court," Claire screamed, eyes blazing with pain and rage. But Judge Briggs sat motionless, her face stone cold. An elderly veteran in the back row stood. "I served with him. He's not faking." Then another stood, and another. Veterans rose one by one. Their eyes weren't angry, they were heartbroken. This was no longer a court hearing. It was a stain on the justice they once fought for. No one remained seated. A line of veterans stood, gray hair, wooden crutches, wheelchairs. They didn't shout, didn't slam desks. They just stood. In the silence, a cane tapped the floor softly. Doris McKenna stooped back. Trembling hands walked slowly forward. Your Honor, my grandson died in Fallujah. I know pain, but worse than death is seeing a man like him treated like a criminal. Her voice cracked. The price of freedom should never be this cheap. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Briggs said nothing, but her eyes began to waver. And then from the very woman who hadn't spoken a word of compassion came a move no one saw coming. Judge Eleanor Briggs sat still. Her gaze froze on the blood soaking through Ray's shirt. She looked around. This courtroom was no longer a place of judgment. It was now a mirror reflecting the failures of justice. Her hand trembled as she gently tapped the gavel. This court will recess for 5 minutes, she said. Her voice had lost its steel, but no one moved. Ray still lay unconscious. Claire held his hand, whispering as if to a soldier still stuck on the battlefield. Doris returned to her seat, but before sitting, she turned back one last time. Judge Briggs, if you still have a heart, let it speak louder than the law. And then Judge Eleanor Briggs stood, descended from the bench, and left her gavel behind. The room went breathless. No one could have predicted what she would do next. Yeah! Judge Briggs descended the steps, as if shedding a chain of stone from her face. No longer a judge, just a woman, standing among those who had once bled for the country she now served. She stopped at Ray's side. He remained unconscious. Claire looked eyes filled with fury and pleading. Then Briggs knelt. For the first time in 23 years on the bench, she knelt before a defendant. I was wrong, she said, voice cracking. Not the law itself, but how I used it. She turned to the court clerk, her voice trembling. Drop all charges. I'll sign the motion to expunge Mr. Walker's record today. Then Briggs looked up, addressing everyone. If justice has no compassion, it becomes nothing but a formality. Ha! A short video clip showing Ray's collapse and Judge Briggs kneeling went viral across America overnight. People didn't just watch. They shared it with captions like, "We forgot him for too long." Veterans across the country sent letters to the courthouse. School children drew pictures of Ray. Media dubbed him the soldier who made justice kneel. But Ray stayed silent. He was still healing physically and emotionally. When he finally appeared before the public, he spoke only one sentence. I don't need to be celebrated. I just need others not to be left behind. And then came an invitation he never imagined receiving from a place he never dreamed of stepping into. 2 weeks after the hearing, Ray Walker took the stage in the U.S. Capitol. No longer the defendant, no longer forgotten. Pinned on his chest was a badge that read, National Veteran Justice Ambassador. He opened his speech with the very words Judge Briggs once spoke. If justice has no compassion, it becomes nothing but a formality. Ray's new journey had begun traveling across the country, speaking with law students, policymakers, and community leaders. He didn't preach pity. He demanded accountability from a society that once proudly called people like him heroes. Everywhere he went, one question echoed. Are we truly protecting those who once protected us? A year after the incident, Arlington County Courthouse, the place where Ray had once collapsed, held a special ceremony. At the center of its plaza stood a new bronze statue, not of someone standing tall, but of a soldier kneeling on one knee, gripping a crutch like a sword, eyes gazing upward. Beneath the statue, a bronze plaque read, Honor is not measured by how long you stand, but by how fiercely you refuse to fall. Ray stood quietly, surrounded by hundreds of veterans, students, judges, even those who once passed judgment on him. But in that moment, there were no ranks, only a nation bowing before resilience.com. From a small courtroom incident, Ray Walker's story became the spark for something bigger. A bill named after him, the Walker Act, was introduced to the U.S. Senate. The law mandated that all courts nationwide must consider the physical and mental health of veterans before issuing any penalty. Cities began to establish compassion courts staffed with mental health professionals, mobility support, and veteran advocates. But Ray didn't stop there. He founded the Honor Project, a nonprofit offering legal and emotional support to homeless veterans. Those once forgotten now had a place to be heard, to heal and to be remembered. Because sometimes one person standing at the right moment can make an entire system bow. One quiet autumn afternoon, unannounced, Ray Walker returned to Arlington Courthouse. No crowds, no cameras, just the rustle of dry leaves underfoot. He stopped in front of his own statue, not to admire it, but to quietly place a folded American flag at its base. Then he sat on the old stone bench beside it, the very bench where Claire once waited for him after court. In his hands, a small notebook. On the first page, those who once stood for others. He opened it and wrote another name, not his own, but Doris McKenna's, because Ray knew it wasn't the law that brought him back to life. It was humanity. And then he smiled. The smile of a man who finally knew he was no longer invisible. Oh, Raymond Walker didn't stand up to be applauded. He stood, because too many others no longer could. This story isn't just about one soldier. It's about a society and how it treats those who once bled for it. We can build statues, hold ceremonies, but real respect is shown in how we act on ordinary days. At Justice for Veterans, we don't tell stories just to remember the past. We tell them to shake the present and awaken what's being forgotten. If you believe no one who once sacrificed for you should be treated like a criminal, leave a comment below. I stand with them. And remember, justice doesn't begin in the courtroom. It begins in the heart of each of us.